Hi, this is Chris Haughey. Thank you for joining me today on Create with Chris. I'm super excited about this video as it is something totally different from what we've ever done before. Today I'm going to be showing you how to upcycle a poorly painted plaque and turn it into something spectacular. So let's get started. I've had this carved wood fish plaque for several years, and I just think it is the most unique surface. It is wood and it is carved, but honestly, the painting on it just looked awful. And I decided, why not try to repaint it? After all, it couldn't look any worse. I did seal the surface with multi-purpose sealer just to ensure that the paint will stick well. I'm using the Decor Americana paint, and sometimes if it's an oil-based, a lot of these imports are not too sure that the paint's going to stick well. Using a 3/4 inch angle and my number 5 radical round just to get a nice, smooth, even coat. I'm not changing the colors a whole lot. I want to keep it kind of rustic and earthy. So I want it to look a little bit antiqued or time worn. So it's not going to require perfection painting. Just make sure that it's nice and smooth. I do dry every layer in between just to make sure that it's not going to lift any of the prior paint off. I wanted to add a little bit of wood grain. I'm using light cinnamon and my incredible comb just to brush on some quick wood graining effect. Love how it's turning out. I think that gives it a nice look. This plaque has a lot of interesting carving in it that you don't see because it's not painted well. Just going to enhance those areas, such as the cracks in between the plaques, to make it look like there are 3 separate boards that the fish is mounted on. Add shading. Shading is always does so much. I love shading. It just is like the magic of painting. And it covers up a multitude of sins as well. So it's a great way to dress anything up and make it look rich and beautiful. The screws were painted a bright, shiny metallic silver. I just dulled them down with a little bit of cobblestone, added some soft black shading, a little bit of warm white highlights, shaded around these screws. Now the wood that is around the fish at the top and the bottom was not a bad color, but I did top coat it to give it a fresh coat of paint. There were some rawhide binding straps that were really cool that you couldn't see because they were all painted the same color. And I dry brushed the carved wood section with a little bit of, I think that was fawn that I used on the background. I just added that. Wasn't a fan of the color of the banner at the top and the bottom. Definitely didn't like that dark brown. So I top coated it with sand and gray sand, I believe it was. The top one was laurel, and trying to decide how I wanted. I kind of liked the blue, but I wanted it a little more white. So I added some warm white to that to tone it down. Shaded around all of the edges with charcoal gray just to give more earthiness and rusticness to the look. And a little more highlights. It's just basically highlighting and shading to bring out all of those really unique features. I did base coat most of the entire fish with antique white. The color palette was good. It was just too gaudy. So I just wanted to tone it down. I knew that the fins were going to be dark green, so I kind of left those. Shading or highlighting the bottom of his tummy a little bit with the warm white. I think I threw some laurel in there as well. This is lush green, which is a really nice fish color. And I'm using that just to bring out the green in the fish. Little bit of highlighting. And then I toned down the tips of the fins. There's that laurel going in on his tummy with a little bit of plantation pine. Painted the eye, raw sienna. The pupil was soft black. Highlighting, and then definitely put some white in there to really make that eye look kind of glassy. Shade around the eye so it really pops out. I think I did use black green to deepen that plantation pine a little bit. To add the stripe down the side, very, very, very thin heritage brick. Just wanted that soft hint of color. I was kind of up to my neck with the gaudiness, so I wanted to tone it down. I always figure you can go back and add more. A little bit of paint makes a big difference. Adding a little bit of thin, soft black around the gills, anywhere it was carved, just to make the carving show up. It just really is not a bad piece. It just wasn't painted well. I thought about splattering the speckles on the fish, but I wanted more control. So I'm just using my number 5 radical round and thinned soft black to add those dip dots on there. It was worth the time it took to do it as opposed to splattering. Just basically going back and adding some highlights. On the banner, it was mostly a dry brushing to get that effect. I decided on the lettering, I could paint them on or I could use image transfer, and I am a fan of image transfer. I created my lettering, I printed it in reverse, and I cut it close to the edge of the letters. I am using matte medium to transfer the lettering, just putting a very generous even coat, putting the reverse side down onto the banner. Need to make sure that all the wrinkles and bubbles are pressed out, using a bottle of paint as a roller just to make sure it adheres well, and doing the same on the bottom. Now I did run into a little bit of an issue with this particular surface because it was carved and not super flat. I did have some issues where it did not adhere as well as it would have on a flat surface. I had to let it dry completely, and it took I probably allowed about 6 hours. Now I am saturating it. It's completely dry, saturating it with water. I'm going to let that water sit on there for about 5 minutes. Basically, what I'm doing is going in and removing all of the paper fiber. The only thing that will be left is the actual ink on the lettering. Using my fingers because I can feel how hard I'm pressing, and I'm just rolling my fingers across to remove that paper fiber. If you become too aggressive with the rubbing, it will remove the ink really quickly. So that's why I stick to my fingers. I can feel the texture of the fiber underneath my fingers. You can even see on here, if you don't get it all off, it leaves, as it dries, a white film. So just going over it to make sure that I get all of that paper fiber off. Believe me, this is a game of patience. Don't get too overzealous and rub so hard just to get it done quicker, because it will lift all of that ink up and you'll have to start from scratch. So take your time, wipe off the excess, the water, see where you're at, let it dry a little bit, add more. You can see I'm adding more. I can feel it with my fingertips. Make sure you allow that water to work. And I'm not talking leave it on there overnight, but you want to saturate that paper so that it just balls up and rubs off very easily. And I did get a little bit aggressive down on here on the bottom, and you'll see where I pulled some of the lettering off. I was going to edit this out, but I decided it probably is a good learning lesson. Left it in there so you could see what happened and how I fixed it. But I kind of getting at the tail end, and I wanted to make it go a little bit faster, and I'm using my fingernail. Not a good idea. You can see the top of the T's kind of missing, and that's because it kind of curved down where it was carved. But I can feel, keep going over, part of the W came lifted off. Those are easy fixes. To me, this is so much easier than painting it because I get such a professional finish, and I love how that looks. All I'm doing now is going back with my Epic script liner and touching up the lettering where I lifted it off. After it's dried and the finish is applied, you absolutely will not be able to tell. So don't panic if it doesn't work out. And sometimes, if you don't get a complete image transfer, a little bit of rustic can be appealing as well. I am sealing it now that I'm finished with a coat of ultra matte varnish. When this is dry, I will varnish the entire plaque. I love how this turned out. So maybe if you receive a gift that you're not completely thrilled with, you can think about adding a little bit of magic painting touches to it to make it spectacular. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with your friends. Please check out my other videos. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I hope you learned a few new tips, tricks, and techniques to make your painting life a little bit easier and a lot more fun. I look forward to our next painting adventure together.